Welcome to the Char Chit Chat, a podcast exploring all things biochar related, coming to you from a small sheep and tree farm in the deep south of New Zealand. All right, thank you, Helen, for joining me for a chat today. I'd like to start with asking a question. Who is Helen Dew?
I'm an 87-year-old. I've spent most of my life living in Carterton, and my family moved up from Wellington when I was 8. So I've been here ever since. I love the Wairarapa, I love Carterton. I've become very much a part of the community and local currency systems. And I've got quite a variety of interests, the farmers market. And so I've got still quite an involved life, although I'm quite disabled. I have to have paid gardeners now, and if I want to go and see the garden, I pull on my waterproof trousers and crawl, and that's my way of visiting the garden. But I've got wonderful gardeners.
Yes, and are you on a quarter-acre section in town, aren't you?
No, I was.
Uh-huh.
That was the family home,
Yep.
and now I'm on a property about 1/3 the size, 400 square meters, and 100 of that is the house, and the rest is all in cultivation. I have an orchard, a berry cage, vines, raised beds, a hothouse, potting shed. It's all very compact. People who visit often remark on how much I've been able to incorporate in a very small space.
Yeah. I am very familiar with the Living the Change film that you were in I think 2018, right?
Mhm.
And are you still at the same place as that, or have you moved since then?
Now, I can't remember that. Um, did you see me at a little hothouse there?
Yes, yes, and I remember the garden being very much, like you say, very intense gardening and lots of stuff happening, lots of growing
Well,
happening.
yes, but that was my old property. That was intense as well. Yeah,
Okay.
and I still feed myself and have surplus for the farmers market and family and preserving and that.
Amazing. Wow. So you had a lot of help then doing the second garden, your most recent garden, were you
Oh
basically
yes, I
just
did.
telling other people what to do and where to put stuff?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
great.
and yeah. So, and my orchard is very productive. I don't have any lawn.
Yeah.
It's all in production, and I mulched the whole area with arborist mulch.
Yep. Okay, can you please tell us what you remember about when biochar first came into your awareness?
Well, I remember hearing about it from my colleague in Living Economies, Phil Stevens. He lives in Ashurst, and he's part of the biochar network. And I was intrigued, and I invited him over to give a public presentation here in Carterton. Quite a few people came, and there was a lot of interest. And so that's when I first came across it. And so I get some biochar from Phil in the sacks that he packages, and I incorporate that into my hothouse and into my planting beds and into my compost. And I make a bit myself too in my little wood burner.
Yes. Okay, when you incorporate it into your growing beds, can you tell us a little bit more about that exact process you go through, please?
Oh, well, say when I'm planting my capsicum plants in the hothouse, well, I'll fork some of the biochar into the location for the plants, and also add some compost. And I make a lot of compost. Well, I don't, my gardener does now. And so I think it makes a big difference to how productive the plants are.
Yeah. And do you inoculate the biochar or charge it with nutrients and with biology, or are you putting it in direct from the sack?
Well, Bill produces inoculated biochar, so I don't need to. But if
Ah,
I'm doing my own, I
yes,
put my own straight into my compost and that inoculates it.
yes, great. Can you tell us a little bit more about your favorite method of making biochar, please?
Oh, well, I just got a wood burner. I've got a pyroclastic mini in my little house because I only got a tiny house.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, when I've got lots of good hot coals, I get two food tins, like baked bean tins.
Hmm.
And I've fluted the end of one so that it can be squished into the other. And so I almost fill both of those tins and squish them together and lay them on the hot coals. And the gases flare off once the condense is heated. And then by the morning, I've got biochar, which then goes out into my compost bins. And the material I use to fill those tins is eggshells and nutshells,
Hmm.
um, spent seeds, seeds that have gone past their use by date, because I'm a seed saver as well. So there's a constant turnover of those. And dried citrus peel. I mean, as long as the material that you're using is absolutely dry, then it makes a good biochar. And I also use avocado pits, but they
Yeah.
take a long time to dry. So, and then you can use shavings and scraps of wood. So that can all go in as well, as long as it's perfectly dry.
Okay. Yeah, and if a stranger asks you what biochar is, what do you tell them?
Well, I would say that it's a carbon material. It's bits of wood and shells and things that you bake in a mini oven, in my case, in the absence of oxygen. And the resulting biochar, when you processed it properly, acts like a sponge in the soil. So it absorbs nutrients and retains those nutrients and makes them available to your plants. And it also sequesters, which is very good for managing our carbon emissions. And so there's a double benefit.
Yeah, I think it cut out there. I think you said that it sequesters carbon. Is that correct?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I like it as well. It means that anybody and everybody could be making biochar somehow, somewhere, when they might otherwise not, where they might just have a campfire, for example, that just goes to ash, and they've lost
Yes,
the opportunity of making the char and then putting that back into the
right.
soil.
That's
Yeah.
right. So if you have more land and you can have an outdoor system, then if you haven't got a properly designed cauldron, you can just have a pit and you stack your fire up, stack all your dry wood up, and then you light your fire from the top and extinguish it before it's fully burnt down to ash. And so you have water nearby, ready to put that fire out at the end, and you've got wonderful biochar.
Yeah. How many years have you been gardening?
Since I was four,
Since you were four. Wow. Okay. So my question then is, in your opinion, you did say before that you think things grow better, but how much better? Was it very noticeable for you, or
I think it was a gradual thing. I think as my soil, improved,
yeah,
it was kind of gradual.
okay. Yeah. 'Cause some people do sell biochar as a bit of a panacea that it's going to make your soil absolutely amazing and plants are going to jump out the ground and grow incredibly
Mm.
fast and everything, but it's not
I,
necessarily
that,
like that, is it?
no, it isn't, is it? It's a gradual thing because, biochar on its own isn't a magic bullet. You have to have your compost and the right soil moisture and warmth and everything else in tune as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we've kind of talked a little bit about how making and promoting biochar is helping the earth. Would you like to add anything else to that?
Well, I think on a larger scale, an industrial level, in forestry, I think on the slash is a great source for making biochar
Yeah.
uh, rather than just being left to rot. I mean, there's a benefit in leaving it to rot as well. But if it's accessible and you've got water available for the quenching, so you can perhaps take a tank on a trailer, then if that slash was utilised, I think we could make a lot of biochar because it's not just suitable for the home garden. I mean, it's animal food as well. You know,
Yeah.
um, Bill Stevens is feeding it to his cows, and his sheep are starting to take a liking to it as well. So they must know that there's something good about it, and his chickens will have a peek at it. And it could be used in agricultural land, crop rotations and things, and improving the soil. And if you just spread it, and then if you've got animals, you can just get them to tread it into the soil. And it could be part of the regenerative gardening, the regenerative agriculture system.
Yes. Yeah, and what do you think is needed in New Zealand to make that happen?
Oh, I guess raising awareness, more publicity. It's hard to get people's attention. And of course, the urban householder is so accustomed to just putting it in the trash, whatever, the
Mm.
eggshells, the nutshells, or whatever, all goes in the trash and off to the landfill. There's a lot of ignorance about it and the need for education and motivation because, it does take a little bit of effort.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I'd love to see more people burning all their bones from, when
Oh,
they have a lamb shank or they have chops or something like that,
yeah,
and
yeah,
making that accessible to the soil again in a very fast-tracked way rather than it going to a landfill somewhere and sitting there for thousands of years where the soil never really gets the benefit of it. And we've lost then the calcium and the potassium and
yeah,
so on.
that's right. And of course, that's if you eat meat. I've been a
Yeah.
vegetarian since I was about in the 30s. And so I don't have bones to worry about.
Yeah.
And I use the Bokashi system too
Oh,
for my kitchen waste. It was very beneficial in combination. As I say, it's not just one silver bullet. These things all add to the quality of the soil, and the soil is everything. The quality of our food depends on the quality of the soil.
yeah. So can you explain or describe how you use bokashi? What's your system like at home?
Well, I've just got a little double bucket unit in my pantry,
Hmm.
and so I sprinkle some of the Bokashi inoculant into the bottom of the bucket. At that stage, when I'm ready to start a new bucket, if I've got biochar, I can put some of that in the bottom,
Mm.
and then each day or two, I'll add some kitchen scraps and squish them down with a bunch of newspaper or something, and another sprinkle of the inoculant, and gradually fill the bucket up. And then I leave the bucket for about 3 weeks after it's full, and then that goes into the top of a cupboard bins of compost. I don't put it into a freshly made compost bin because that's still heating. My instinct suggests that the heat will damage the mycelium in bokashi. So I wait till the heat's gone out, and then I'll add that, mix a bit of soil to get the decomposition going in the bokashi. It breaks down very quickly once you've mixed it with soil.
Yeah.
The worms love it.
They love the bokashi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, was it easy to find a gardener that would help with these kind of, some would say, alternative things like bokashi and biochar and so on? Was it easy to find a gardener that would accept that, or did you really struggle and then have to spend a lot of time kind of
I,
working with them?
I found it easy, but you see, I know a lot of people. I've
Mm,
been around here a long time, and so I knew who to approach.
And were they already on board with all those things, or did you have to do a little bit of a bit of
No,
training or
they were on
educating?
board. They're on board, but that wouldn't be the case with all gardeners at all.
Yeah,
They'd be they'd be more the exception than the rule.
yeah. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about time banking and the living economies that you're involved in?
Back in 2002, I hosted Margaret and Declan Kennedy from Germany, and Margaret brought her book called Interest and Inflation Free Money, and I was really inspired. Margaret had given up her work as a lecturer at a prestigious university. She was a lecturer in eco architecture, and she gave that up to promote knowledge about the damage that is done by interest-bearing debt. It's at the heart of the growth imperative. Our economies are obliged to grow if we're going to have a thriving economy. And exponential growth on a finite planet is nonsense. And
Yeah.
so I stopped her book and started an online bookshop for living economies, which we started this educational trust some short time after her visit. And I managed the online bookshop and increased the range of books that we had on dealing with the money system in a totally different way to what we're accustomed to. And it's taken a while. I mean, I think if you look back on, for instance, the suffragette movement and, those major changes in society, those changes took years to take root. And I think it's the same with changing the money system. And there's very powerful vested interests who are keen to maintain the status quo. So it's an uphill battle. It's going to take persistence over many, many years before we get a real change that serves humanity and the environment and the economy in a much more healthy way.
Yes.
So when I went to a conference after Margaret's visit. Margaret and Declan were in New Zealand. I went over to a conference in Germany and met up with a woman. The conference was about alternative monies or complementary systems. And I met a woman there called Eva Stenius. And she was part of the Swedish, it's called JAK, Members Bank. It's a cooperative, which is interest-free. It's not totally cost-free because there are costs involved. There's a head office, so there's a building to maintain, and there are some paid staff, although there's a lot of volunteers. And so there is a joining fee, and there's an insurance when you borrow, which is refundable. I met up with her and she came to New Zealand to tell us about the bank. And we quickly realised there was no way we were going to start a similar bank in New Zealand. We would have needed $30 million to even apply for a licence. But anyway, some of our living economies colleagues put some thought into it, and we developed what we've called now savings pools. So they're savings and loan groups scattered throughout New Zealand. And so we got a similar system in miniature going on in multiple cells around the country. And we just put some money into a common bank account and lend it out to other members of the group, interest-free. And we all get it to their borrowing interest-free. It's something that I think has been a great benefit to the people involved.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the reason I'm interested in asking you more about this is because one of the issues with biochar is that the investment cost to start up a business sometimes are quite high. And because it's not known, the banks don't necessarily want to lend on it either because they don't even know what
No,
the word means or what the product is. And so
Mhm.
that's why I'd like to keep going into little bit more detail. So can you tell me a bit more about the savings pools? For example, how many people would be in a pool?
Well, it varies a lot. You might start by saying, how big is your lounge? Because there's a social side of this as well. We
Mm,
meet on a regular basis, and we build a community of trust and transparency, and we consider the proposals of the individuals who are seeking a fund for a particular purpose. Now, that, in my experience, I belong to two different groups, and one has about a dozen members, and I think the other's about 16. And so we've lent money. It's a very small scale. We've lent money for such things as replacing the car, or paying the dentist bill, or, or cutting up a credit card, things like that, home renovations. And so it has worked admirably for those purposes. And there are some groups that have used the funds for house purchase as well. It depends on the resources of the group, how far you can take this, and also over what period you're prepared to schedule the repayment. So that comes into it. We tend to stretch from, say, a year to maybe 4 years, 5 years into the future for the total repayment. Now, one of the interesting things about how the mechanics of this is, when you join, you can put in whatever money into the bank you like. It doesn't have to be a fixed amount or a permanent deposit. It can be a bulk sum, or it can be $10 a month, whatever. But that money is always yours, and you can get that money back, provided it's not on loan to somebody. But you've got first dibs on that money back if you need it for something.
mhm.
And so now when somebody, say, is going to place the car and they need, say, $12,000 or something, and so the contract that they draw up for repayment would work out at half of their repayment going to pay off their loan, and the other half of their deposit would be compulsory savings. Now, at the end of the contract, their compulsory savings is a lump sum that's available to them to withdraw or leave for further activity in the group. Now, the effect of that is that whereas the group allowed the borrower to use their savings interest-free for a particular period, by the end of the borrower's contract, the group would have been using their savings interest-free for the similar period. Of course, there is the possibility of pre-savings, that is, having a sum already in the pool before you borrow, and so that shortens your repayment period and your reciprocity payments. Did I make that clear?
Yes. So if they've borrowed $12,000, but say they
Mhm.
already had 3,000 already that they had contributed into the pool,
Yeah.
in effect, they would then take back their 3,000 and then borrow nine.
Yes.
Then you're saying that they might have 2 years to repay that.
Or whatever
So,
is agreed.
yeah, so then they repay the whole 12,000, but
No, they repay 9,000,
yes.
and they also save another 9,000.
So they have to be having that kind of quite high income then in that
Yes, they
time
do.
period.
They do.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so sometimes that's why the contract is drawn out for perhaps a longer period,
Yeah.
so that they can comfortably manage it. And if there's a hiccup somewhere along the line, then there's a renegotiation. And
Uh-huh.
so we might take a payment holiday for a month and extend the repayment period, or reduce the amount repayable and extend the repayment period. So it's not like a bank where you get penalties for failure.
Yes.
There's accommodation.
Yeah. Okay, so then they got to repay the 9 plus another 9. So at the
Mm,
end of the term, they would then have paid back everybody else that they borrowed from the
yeah,
9,000, and then they would have left another 9 in the savings pool that's then
yeah,
available for other people to borrow.
yes, or they can
But
withdraw that 9 at the end if they want it.
okay. So in effect, it kind of pushes or encourages people then to make the savings pool increase in size, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, I see.
the more people borrow, the greater the capacity of the pool to assist.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's really interesting. No, I
Yeah,
like
so
it a lot.
borrowing is a good thing. Yeah.
Now, who sets up the contracts?
Well, we have templates.
Yes.
We've developed them over the years.
Yeah. And are those available to anybody in New Zealand? Like if you start a new group, do you get access to
Yes,
those templates?
yes. Although you have to make contact with a group, so we've got an inquirer's address
Yeah.
on the Living Economies website under the Savings Pool tab, and so if somebody was interested, they could send a message to that address, and then they'd get a response, and we'd make some connections.
Yeah. And then do the people that lend their money, do they have any protection by New Zealand law that if someone's borrowed 10,000 and then does not pay it back, they leave the country or whatever, do they have some legal protection and
So the contracts have common law force,
Mhm.
so there is that protection, and that we usually ask for some security item as well.
Yeah.
So it might be, if you're borrowed to buy a car, for instance, well, maybe the car becomes the security.
Yeah.
And I might say that I'm not aware that we've ever had to claim on a security yet. To my knowledge, there's never been, there's been some renegotiations and things like that, but
Yeah.
never a failure as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Because eventually you would also have to go to court, right? If it became messy, you'd have to then
Yes,
pay
yes,
for court costs and so on. Yeah.
that's right, that's right.
Okay.
And that would come out of the pockets of the members.
Yeah. And you said you belonged to another savings pool. So was that one a different type or different
Yeah,
amounts or
no,
something?
no, I just belong to two with different memberships.
Okay, so like another set of people, but
Mm,
more or less doing the same thing.
yeah, exactly the same thing.
Okay. Cool. So then if you need to borrow twice for two different things, you can go one to one group and then to the other one.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have to be transparent about what your existing commitments are.
Yeah.
So that comes into it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for explaining all that and your patience and me saying it back and how I'm thinking about it. So yeah, no, it's great. All right. Is there anything else that you'd like us to chat about in this little podcast?
Well, as I said before, about improving the soil, there's no one magic bullet. And for me, the way I've lived my life is sort of a resilience and focus and, sustainability and so forth. There's been no one thing either. It's a combination of many, many things.
Yeah.
And so I cover that. I've written my autobiography, which is just about to go off to the publisher now. I cover all those different facets in my book.
Okay.
And so my editor composed something for the back cover, which sounds pretty amazing. So I could read that to you if you like, and that'll give you an idea of what the book's like.
Yeah, please
And,
do.
and yeah, so it says, long before sustainability became a movement, Helen lived it quietly, purposefully, and with every fibre of her being. Raised on the dairy farms of Wairarapa during times of hardship and ingenuity, Helen's path was shaped by a deep respect for nature, resourcefulness, and the belief that even the smallest actions matter. The memoir is the inspiring and beautifully told story of a woman who didn't wait for change, she lived it. This engaging story weaves the factual details of Helen's life, childhood stories, marriage, and raising 4 children, the joy of gardening, the importance of family and community in everything she did, with an important message that the most powerful economic systems are forged in the soil of everyday lives. Midway through her life, Helen came to understand that the conventional money systems could weaken communities rather than strengthen them. Knowing there had to be a better way, she set out around the country and across the world to learn from those already building the kind of systems she believed in. What she found affirmed her vision. Communities thrive through cooperation over connection, economies grounded in sustainability, and currencies designed to serve people rather than exploit them. Helen's work is not nostalgic or radical. It is profoundly practical, rooted in the conviction that our planet's future is not guaranteed, but rather determined by the choices we make today. This book doesn't just invite you to admire her approach to her life's work, it hands you the tools to continue it. It's an invitation to reawaken community spirit and recognize that even in the harshest seasons, the seeds of a better world are red always and already in our hands. So that's going on the back cover.
Brilliant.
I think she's done a great job there.
Did your editor write that?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Sounds great. And so when do you think that will then come out and be available for people to get hold of?
Probably sometime July.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going off for proofreading. Phil Stevens is going to be the proofreader. And the editor, by the way, is Antoinette Wilson.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. And her sister, Danielle, has been my coach for writing.
Uh-huh.
And she had a big hand in that script for the back cover too.
Yeah, how long does it take you to write a book about yourself?
Well, 6, 7 months by the time we get a book, I think.
Yeah.
But I have wonderful help. I couldn't have done it that fast on my own.
Okay. So have you done it on a computer or have you done it by writing it down in paper?
No, on computer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, using Zoom sessions for refining it.
Hmm.
Mm. So
Yeah.
I'm looking
And I'm
because
guessing, is it self-published?
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And did you say, or have you written a book before?
Wait on. No, it's going to be with a publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we've made that decision.
So how did you sell the idea to a publisher? Because I know that's the challenge, isn't it, when people want to write a book?
Well, it just happens that the publisher is Antoinette's father,
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
and he knows me.
That's cool. All right.
It is cool. So you see, I just, it's just fallen into my lap, really.
Yeah, well, you have an important story that needs to be told. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it all started out as in a very modest way. I thought I was just going to write down a few stories that I wanted to pass on to my children. And then it started to grow, and I sort of felt like I was getting out of my depth. And then I rang Antoinette and said, I'm going to need some tips here. And she said, oh, perfect timing. She said, Danielle is just launching a business as a writer's coach. And
Oh.
so I took that opportunity and away we went.
Oh. Well, great. I look forward to that being published and being available and hearing what people think about it, and hopefully that lots of people are inspired by it too.
Yeah.
And it'd be great, I think,
Perhaps-
as a family
Oh, yes.
thing to have. It's a beautiful thing to have. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish off with today?
Wish you well with this project. I think it's a marvelous project because I think biochar has got such potential and it's not even being remotely taken advantage of. And the more we can do to promote that, the better. And I think there's other things that interest me as well, like natural burial. There's a lot to be said for that. I'm going to have a natural burial and a tree planted by my grave. And I'm not even having a casket. I'm just going to be having a shroud. I want to present nature with the least possible impediment to the decomposition process. So things like this, are covered in the book. And there's lighter moments too. There's some funny things in there. There's a little children's story about a kitten. And, it's quite varied.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very interested in the natural burials as well. Were you involved in getting that legalized or getting that to happen, or is it something that's actually just already available in your area?
Lobby council to get it available in that area. Yeah, it took a while, but we got there in the end. And I think every local body should have that because it's all part of living more sustainably. You
Yeah.
know, there's alternatives, but they all cost the earth in material terms. And so I think doing things nature's way is going to be the way to go.
Yes, for sure. And what has the council had to do to accommodate the natural burial? I mean, are you going to be in a normal cemetery, or is this a special cemetery, or how does it work?
It's a section of a normal cemetery. So
Uh-huh.
an area set aside for natural burial. And, one of the main differences is that you're buried in a much shallower grave than conventional,
Yes.
where your body is available to life in the soil above. And whereas when you're 6 feet under, you're
Yeah.
just becoming water pollution basically. And
Yes.
all the chemicals and all the rest of it that go with the conventional system. So much kinder to nature. And you've got a forest at the end, which is all good for the planet as well.
Yeah, was that tricky to be allowed to plant a tree right on top of you or right next to you? Because that's not normal in a cemetery either, really, is it?
Isn't. And that's you use a slightly larger plot of land because the casket, if one uses a casket, is quite close to the surface. The tree is usually planted beside the casket.
Yeah.
You need a slightly bigger plot, but that's all doable.
Yeah, no, I'm super interested in that idea. And my partner and I have actually talked about setting up something similar on a property somewhere.
I think you'd find you make more progress if you worked with council
Yeah.
and, because there's too many rules and regulations to overcome. But if you look at the natural burial website, Mark Blackham is Natural Burial New Zealand, and he's willing to come out and talk to people, talk to groups, talk to council. He's willing to do all that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so and he's got a great story to tell. He's another one, who's had a life of persistence. It's taken him a long time to get the natural burial idea to where it is starting to take root now.
Yeah. Was your council the first one to permit it?
No, there was two in the Wellington region, one at Makara, and I can't remember where the other one was, but they were established before ours was.
Okay, so there's at least three that you know of. Is that three
Mhm.
separate councils that have allowed it?
Yes,
Okay, so that should make it easier for anybody else to petition their councils to do it,
that's
as
right. That's right.
we've got examples of it already been done.
That's
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so I think you are liable to make more progress quicker if you work with council.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was considering working with council, which was just still going to be a huge boulder to push up a hill because of all their permits and consenting and that whole long process. And it would be a probably quite expensive too. Does
Sorry?
your natural burial cost much different to a conventional burial
Yes, it is. It
cremation?
is a bit. It is more expensive because you've got to buy your tree,
Yeah,
and also you've got a bigger plot. So it's the land that costs money.
yeah. So
Mhm.
in effect, you're paying for a double plot, aren't you?
Yeah.
Sounds a nice idea that we can have a forest planted for us, in effect, at
Mm.
the end of our
Mm.
life, that we can then have a forest to live
Mm.
on. Because
Mm.
the carbon is all cycling, right? The carbon is going from you to the tree to the atmosphere, and yeah. And there could be biochar involved. We could also put down a bed of biochar right in the
We
grave.
could. We could. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing about that. You've inspired me to do some more research on lots of different topics, and I hope
Mhm.
the people listening also will do the same. We've gone on lots of different tangents, not just biochar, but that's what I'm actually liking a lot about this podcast is that we cover a lot of other really important topics as well.
Good. Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed the process.
Yeah, very welcome. All right. Thank you very much, Helen.
Bye.
Bye.